In this video, I'm going to show you how to get Atari 5200 games up and running on an Xbox Series X or S using Retroarch. You know, I really don't have a whole lot to say about the Atari 5200. It's a failed Atari system that shares some similarities with their 8-bit computers, so it shares an emulator with their 8-bit computers. Because of this, it has been known to be kind of complicated to get running, but if you do the steps in a certain order, it's actually fairly easy, so that's what I'm going to show you all how to do today. So let's just cut to the chase and jump in. So to get Atari 5200 emulation up and running, you need a couple of things. First, you need Atari 5200 games. You can source these using your own collection and a hardware dumper, or search the shady parts of the net to find them. The second thing you need is an Atari 5200 BIOS file, and it needs to be named 5200.rom. And same thing, you can either dump this from your own console using some hardware methods, or search the internet for it. As always, no download links are going to be provided, as that is considered illegal, so you will have to do the footwork on your own. Do not ask for links, any requests will be deleted. But once you have the files you need sourced, we're just going to dump them onto a USB drive. And once those have finished copying over, you can close out of everything on your computer, take your USB drive out, and put it into your Xbox. When you put your USB drive into your Xbox, it should pop up automatically if this is a drive you've been using previously. If this is the first time you've put it in, it will pop up a message asking you if you want to format it as Xbox storage or use it as media storage. Choose media. If you decide to format it as Xbox storage, it will delete everything that is on the drive, and that is just kind of a waste of time for us. So, media. So the first thing we need to do to get Atari 5200 games is to get the Atari 5200 BIOS placed into our Retroarch system folder. And I cannot stress enough how much you want to do this before you try loading an Atari 5200 game, as it will cause a lot of headaches later if you try to load a game first. So, order of operations. BIOS in system folder, then games. Anyway, My Files Explorer, open it up. From here, we're going to go to removable storage devices, removable disk E. Scroll down to the bottom to find your 5200.rom file. Press start on it, copy file. Navigate over to isolated storage here on the left. Now navigate up to where it says packages up here and press A. And find your Retroarch system folder. Mine has always been this top one. You might have to do some searching. It'll be a bunch of random numbers and letters like so. So I have two of them. This one is not my folder. This one is. You could go into the folder and see all of this stuff. And if you go into the local state folder, it will have all of your Retroarch contents. That's how you know you're in the right place. Anyway, go into the system folder. Press start in an empty space up here and click paste to get your 5200 BIOS in place. Yay! But once you have that ready to go ahead and boot into Retroarch. Now, just as a quick reminder, this is a continuation of my original Retroarch install video, so a lot of settings are initially set for me automatically, so please refer back to that original video for these settings. From here, we're going to make an Atari 5200 game playlist. Normally, I'd show you how to load it up through here, but I'm just not even going to waste my time with that today. So press right on your D-pad to go over to the import content directory. Go down to manual scan. Content directory, we're going to scroll to our USB drive, which is E. Find your Atari 5200 games folder and tell it to scan this directory. For system name, we are going to Atari 5200. And default core, we're going down to Atari 5200, Atari 800 right here. If you have your Atari 5200 games in subfolders, make sure Scan Recursively is on, and if you have them zipped, make sure you have Scan Inside Archives on. But once you have all the options set as you need, go down to Start Scan. Now when I back out of this menu, I should have a new Atari 5200 playlist over on the right, and here it is. And from here, I could just scroll down, select a game to play, and press A to run it. For some reason, the Atari 5200 emulator takes a lot longer to start up than I feel like it should, but it will eventually pop up. Just be patient with it. So when you first load up an Atari 5200 game, you're going to be greeted by this Atari 800 OS emulation halted screen right here. This is perfectly normal. It just means that there is a little bit of setup we need to do beforehand. So going into our quick menu, and we are going to scroll down to Options. And from here, we're going to go down to Atari System, the first option here, and it is trying to emulate an Atari 400/800 8-bit computer, and that is why it isn't loading up our game. So what we need to do is change this over to an Atari 5200, and if you have your initial Retroarch options set as I did in my original install video, you should see the game load up right behind you as soon as you select 5200. But unfortunately, even now that we have the game running, you can't play it without one more setting in place. So press B to go back out to the quick menu and go down to Controls. Press A on the Controls options, go down to Port 1 Controls, and now change the device type from RetroPad to Atari Joystick, otherwise you cannot play your games. But after you have your control type set, and you have your system set as Atari 5200, you can begin enjoying Atari 5200 games. And what better way to show it off than a classic like Pac-Man? The Atari 5200 version of this game is so interesting to me. Now, one quick thing I'd like to point out for everybody is that on certain games, the D-pad input is super sensitive. Like on our friend Centipede here, it is ridiculously sensitive, so you need to like do really light single taps if you want to be able to play this game. Like, it's really hard, actually, which is really unfortunate. I haven't found a workaround for this just yet, but if anyone has any ideas or has found a workaround, and you can leave it down in the comment section below, that would be great for the overall community as a whole. But that's basically the process to uncomplicate Atari 5200 emulation. You just need to do things in a certain order, and everything works exactly as you would expect it to. Get the BIOS file placed, then try loading up your games, and switching the system type over to Atari 5200. And again, it does need to be in this order if you want to avoid some really complicated setup steps. If for whatever reason you did this out of order, you can actually go back into My Files Explorer, and you could go back into the config folder, and you could delete the Atari 800 config file and start over. So you just press start on this, and delete. And that would let you start over to hopefully fix your problem. But that's pretty much going to do it for basic setup, so let's go ahead and cover some of the advanced core options real quick. Going into our quick menu, we could go down to the Options tab. And the first option, as we already covered, is the Atari system. So if you want to do just 5200 games, you're going to leave this on 5200. But if you want to emulate some 8-bit Atari computers, you can also change this to the 400/800, the 800XL, the 130XE, and then of course the 5200. So for this video, I'm just covering 5200, so we're just going to save it as a 5200. Video standard, you can change this between PAL and NTSC. This next option is for 8-bit computer systems, so we don't have to do anything with that. Same with the acceleration, and for cassettes, we don't really need to do anything with those. Next is high-res artifacting, and this tries to emulate some of the way that the Atari 5200 would look. So if you want a clean image, leave this off. If you want an image that's trying to look a little more authentic, you could turn it on. It will reset the game when you turn it on and off, so just be aware of that. Next up is auto detect Atari 5200 card type. I turned this on. Not sure if I have to, but I do it anyway. Next up is a joy hack for Atari 5200 version of Robotron. So if you play that game, enable this. It sadly doesn't fix the D-pad bugs for Centipede, so it's still oversensitive. I had hoped that it might, but it doesn't. Again, if anyone has a solution for that, just leave it in the comment section below to help out the community as a whole. We'd be most grateful. And then next up is internal resolution. If you change this from its default values, it actually causes a lot of problems graphically for Atari 5200 games. So just leave this one alone. And then the last option is more of a Atari 8-bit computer option. You could change the way that the keyboard functions, so we don't have to mess with that here. But that's it as far as core options are concerned. So one last thing to cover real quick before we call this video good, and that is, of course, shaders. So pressing A on the shaders option, you can enable them with the A button here on video shaders. But you do need to make sure you have shaders downloaded, so if you haven't done so already, go to the main menu, Online Updater, Update GLSL shaders, and once those are downloaded and extracted, you can go back up into the quick menu and back into the shaders options. From here, we're going to load a shader preset, shaders GLSL, and I'm going to go down to CRT. And since the Atari 5200 is from the 80s, I'm going to try out a different shader today that I've been experimenting with that I really like the look of for these older Atari systems. So I'm going to scroll down to the CRT Y06KVM1420B shader. And I'm going to go ahead and save it as my core preset because I want this shader every time I load up an Atari 5200 or 8-bit computer game, as I'll go over in a different video. But yes, so this shader gives you some really old school TV type look. You've got the curved geometry at the top, some scan lines, and it's just kind of a more true to life experience for what TVs were like back then. I don't know. I just really enjoy it. I think it looks great. Well, I mean, it doesn't look great. That's kind of the point. Like, it looks authentic. There we go. We'll take it. But that's pretty much going to do it as far as the basics of Atari 5200 emulation on Xbox Series X and S are concerned. So as always, if you happen to have any questions, feel free to ask them down in the comment section below, and I will do my best to try to help you out. But now, if you could all do me just a huge favor and be sure to hit that like or dislike button, just depending on how much you like today's tutorial. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that sub button so you can see when more tutorials just like this one go live. Really helps out the channel, and I can't thank you all enough for that, so thank you so much. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and call it there. So until next time, my wonderful internet peeps, stay awesome, and we will see you all back next video.